And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome to another round of the Conscious Rasta Report here on LIV Radio, LIV TV, here on livinginblack.com. My name is Kidi Awado, aka the Conscious Rasta. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT. And 8 p.m. East Africa time, we get together with you. And we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives. We deal with entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family conflict, future studies, Pan-African affairs, sovereign and sustainable development. Today's date is Wednesday. It is the 4th of December. The year 2024 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place on LIV Radio, LIV TV, livinginblack.com. Today on LIV Radio, the world is teetering on the edge of multiple crises, including civilization wars, population shifts, battles between genders and economic classes. These include, and are not limited to, political rivalries, families torn apart, civil wars, and generational hostilities. Is all this random, or is there something much greater in the works that we need to comprehend if there is any chance at all to correct this turbulence? So that is the subject matter for today. I've got a lot of items on the table to complement this. One of the big and surprising news headlines of this week, excuse me, was what's taking place in Korea as the Korean government declares martial law. So I've pulled this up. I've got this on one of my desktops over here. Bear with me where I try and figure out crises in South Korea of martial law. And here's what I do have pulled up. And I'm pulling this story up on I have a bunch of news channels, and I have to be really careful about which one that I use. So let's go to Associated Press. This article is dated. I don't want to see a video. I want to see the news article. I don't have the date on that. This article, it's probably within the last 24 hours. Tokyo is the source of the AP office. South Korea's President Yoon Suk Yeol faced parliamentary moves to impeach him after he sent heavily armed forces into Seoul's streets with his baffling, and bear with me as this stuff is going wild on my desktop right now. I got way too many windows open. As he sent, okay, is this going to work? Because they're now flipping me around a bunch of ads. Bear with me. As he sent heavily armed forces into Seoul streets with his baffling and sudden declaration of martial law that hearkened to the country's past dictatorships. And we're going to talk about that past dictatorship, the Gwangju uprising from May 1980. But let me just continue a little bit more with this article. Opposition parties submitted the impeachment motion just hours after Parliament unanimously voted to cancel Yoon's declaration, forcing him to lift martial law about 6 hours after it began. Impeaching Yoon requires the support of 2/3 of the National Assembly and at least 6 of the 9 Constitutional Court justices. The liberal opposition Democratic Party holds a majority in the 300-seat parliament and has called for Yoon's resignation. I got a call from, I didn't get a call, I got a message from one of my associates who is living in South Korea, retired from the military and decided South Korea was a place he would like to live. And he's really reported much about living in South Korea, likes it quite a bit. But this was very disturbing when I heard it. And one can only imagine what it is to wake up in a country that there may be some political strife going on. There may be in a contested election, some rivalries. The media may be acting up, acting funny, engaging in a lot of negative propaganda. But to wake up and to find heavily armed forces in the streets and the nation you live in is in martial law, what a shock. What a shock. A vote on the impeachment motion could be held as early as Friday, Democratic Party lawmaker Kim Yong-min said. During the tense hours after martial law, heavily armed forces surrounded the parliament, backed by army helicopters and armored vehicles. Lawmakers climbed walls to get into the building and held off troops by activating fire extinguishers. Politicians and former news anchor Ang Gui-yong tried to pull an assault rifle away from a soldier who had pointed it at her chest as she shouted, "Aren't you ashamed of yourselves?" Wow. The lawmakers who managed to re-enter the building rejected Yoon's martial law declaration 190-0, including 18 lawmakers from Yoon's party. Forcing Yoon to rescind it at a hastily assembled cabinet meeting. So it's going on and on. They're calling for Yoon and his cabinet to resign immediately. And impeachment is probably impending. And if they could find any reason, a couple more paragraphs may be informative. Yoon ordered martial law without warning in a speech late Tuesday, where he vowed to eliminate, quote, anti-state, unquote, forces he said were plotting rebellion and accusing the main opposition parties of supporting the country's rival, North Korea. Yoon gave no direct evidence when he raised the specter of North Korea as a destabilizing force. Yoon has long maintained that a hard line against the North is the only way to stop Pyongyang from following through on its nuclear threats against Seoul. Until the late 1980s, Seoul had a series of strong men who repeatedly invoked North Korea when struggling to control domestic dissidents and political accounts. I'm going to share a link to that. I'm going to put these links up on my Facebook page. It's a little wild and crazy on my desktop for today, and I'm going to do the best I can to put all this together as a cohesive narrative. This is not going to be easy, people. This is not going to be easy, but I contend it will be pleasurable. It will be satisfying. So let's all stay together. Let's all pull together. Harambe. That's why LIB Radio is here. I want to go back to the uprising that took place in South Korea at that earlier time so we can get some kind of understanding there. And I want to say thank you to those of you, including Brother Marvin, who are have been supporting our current LIB Radio Fund Drive. All this month, we are doing the best we can during December to raise the funds necessary to ensure the legacy and the integrity and sustainability of this, the People's Academy, one of very few unconstricted Black-owned media websites available for us today. What has happened to Black-owned media in the United States and what has happened to us is very tragic. It truly is very tragic. Nonetheless, we don't die. We multiply. We vow to continue to press on and to do the best we can, Now, for some odd reason, you should be seeing not my green screen but you should be seeing me in the Conscious Rasta Report studio. So that's where I am. The green screen you were looking at was in your imagination. I want to thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for supporting it, brother. It's been one of those crazy, busy mornings. This is my fourth day of the 56th day regeneration or stem cell rejuvenation program. I'm not the only one doing this. And the other people in the program are excited about the changes they're seeing on the body every day. Now, today being day 4, when we're talking about stem cell activity, it takes 4 days for the fastest growing cells in our body, the epithelial lining of our stomach, which is critical toward digestion, nutrient absorption, parasite resistance, bacterial resistance. It takes 4 days for those cells to replenish themselves. So this, the 4th day, I am experiencing an amazing energy transformation. And it's pretty awesome. It's not too late for somebody to join this one. I'm going to be doing this again beginning February 1st. It's not too late. I can assure you this. You're going to get rewarded every day. I jump on the scale and it goes down. It started at 153.3. The next day it was 150.8. The third day it was 150. Today it was 148.6. 145 is my perfect lifetime body mass index. That's what I weighed when I was 25 years old. And again, I am not dieting. I'm eating every day, but I'm eating in a constricted window of only 6 hours where I eat. The other 18 hours of the day is intermittent fasting, caloric restriction. I'm eating to satisfaction. I have this smoothie that I've put together that is beyond amazing. I knew the smoothie was good. I even upgraded it from the time I used it in March 2021. So that's why I'm feeling so energetic. Even my eyesight in the first 4 days has significantly improved. And it wasn't bad, but now it's even better. That's who we are. That's what we do. So thank you for those of you who are contributing to our fund drive. And I'm just going to remind you, I'm going to put this reminder on the table if you don't mind. I hope you don't mind. Put this reminder on the table for those of you who are with us. You're either with us or you're against us. So I'm going to share that with you, our family, so you can just look at that rather than just look at me as I talk. Here we go. Let us continue. We are looking at what is happening in the world. I want to go to, we were talking about the news, shocking news that broke out this week from Seoul, South Korea, about the President Yoon declaring martial law. But there's a historical context to this because South Korea experienced a number of these right-wing dictatorships in the 1980s. This article here, I don't have the date of this article, but this article talks about the Gwangju uprising on May 27, 1980. Gwangju uprising, mass protests against the South Korean military government that took place in the southern city of Gwangju between May 18 and 27, 1980. Nearly 250,000 people participated in the rebellion. Although it was brutally repressed and initially unsuccessful in bringing about democratic reform in South Korea, it is considered to have been a pivotal moment in the South Korean struggle for democracy. The roots of the Gwangju uprising may be traced to an authoritarianism of the Republic of Korea's first president, the anti-communist Syngman Rhee. During his almost 18 years in office, Rhee grew continuously more repressive toward his political opposition in particular, and the country's citizens in general. Those conditions precipitated massive student-led demonstrations in the early 1960s, and Rhee's ouster in April of that year. After the country was governed for a brief period by a paramilitary system, a military coup led by General Park Chung-hee displaced the government in May 1961. Park became president the following year and remained in office for the next 18 years. As president, Park repressed the political opposition and the personal freedom of South Korean citizens and controlled the press and the universities. In December 1972, he introduced the Yushin Constitution, which dramatically increased presidential powers and created a virtual dictatorship. When Park was assassinated on October 26, 1979, a power void resulted that was filled by Chun Do-hwan, a brigadier general who had taken control of the South Korean military through an internal coup. Once in power, Chun persuaded the new president, Choi Kyu-ha, to name him chief of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency. In April 1980, the military, under Chun's leadership, declared martial law the following month. The situation soon escalated, with a series of nationwide protests against military rule that were led by labor activists, students, and opposition leaders, who began calling for democratic elections. Gwangju, the provincial capital of South Jeolla in southwestern South Korea, which had a long history of political opposition and a simmering grievance toward the Park regime, was a center of the pro-democracy movement. On May 18, some 600 students gathered at Chunnam National University to protest against the suppression of academic freedom and were beaten by government forces. Civilian demonstrators joined the students. With the approval of the United States, which had maintained operational control over combined U.S. and Korean forces since the end of the Korean War, which the Korean War never ended, Chun's government sent elite paratroopers from the special forces to Gwangju to contain the unrest. When the soldiers arrived, they began beating the demonstrators. Rather than squelch the protests, the brutal tactics had the opposite effect, inciting more citizens to join in. As the uprising continued, protesters broke into police stations and armories to seize weapons. They armed themselves with bats, knives, pipes, hammers, Molotov cocktails, and whatever else they could find. They faced 18,000 riot police and 3,000 paratroopers. On May 20, a newspaper called the Militants Bulletin was published to counter the official quote-unquote news being published by the government-run or highly partisan media outlets such as the newspaper Chosun Ilbo, or Chosun Ilbo, which had characterized the protesters as hoodlums with guns. By the early evening of May 21st, the government had retreated, and the citizens of Gwangju declared the city liberated from military rule. The relative quiet lasted 6 days. In the pre-dawn hours of May 27, Chun's military forces unleashed tanks, armored personnel carriers, and helicopters that began indiscriminately attacking the city. It took the military only 2 hours to completely crush the uprising. According to official government figures, nearly 200 people, the great majority of them civilians, were killed in the rebellion. But Gwangju citizens and students insisted that the number was closer to 2,000. That is a historical context of what today's news in South Korea, this week's news in South Korea, could possibly portend. I don't think that the world will tolerate that level of brutality, dictatorship, military rule, and suppression of democratic aspirations, at least not in South Korea. The world will tolerate it in Sudan. The world will tolerate it in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Myanmar. The world will tolerate it in Venezuela. Even though I am not convinced that what the Western press says about the Maduro government in Venezuela is truth. I don't think it is the truth. They've been lying about Venezuela since the brilliant and beloved President Hugo Chavez was in power. Praise be his eternal name. Hugo Chavez was a great leader. He truly was. And the United States government despised him from the time he was inaugurated. Why? Because he was a socialist. He believed that the resources of Venezuela belonged to the Venezuelan people. And the first acts of President Hugo Chavez was an anti-poverty program. And the U.S. government and the right-wing Venezuelans opposed that. Let's go forward. We're seeing these conflicts happening around the world. So much trouble in the world. That's why we need LIB radio. We need LIB radio to be strong. We need LIB radio to be on the cutting edge of research. You heard our program yesterday where my brother Glenn joined us to give us some powerful insights about what is taking place in Angola. And as he was here on LIB radio delivering this incredible presentation about Angola, the President of the United States is today wrapping up his 3rd day visit to Angola. The last major international political act of the Biden administration was to go to try to put seeds down in Africa that will keep the U.S. global empire from collapse. And I'm not necessarily saying that the investment of the United States into the standard gauge railroad that will reach from Luanda to Lupito in the Zambia, I'm not saying that's a bad idea, bad investment. No, we want these railroads to be built. But the United States never does anything, especially in Africa, without ulterior motives. Some claim it is to combat China. I say it is to carve up that magnificent African cake in the new scramble for Africa. We're talking about Berlin Conference 1884, 1885. It's happening again right now in real time in Africa. That's why you need LIB radio to be telling this truth. So I'm going to just take a minute here and see if I can convince anybody. One person, we did see Brother Marvin. He has made a contribution today. I want to thank you, Brother Marvin. Can we rally? Can we get together? Can we all pull together? Harambe. I want to thank you. Thank you for being who you are, for doing what you do, for investing in LIB radio. It doesn't matter if it's a little or if it's a lot. If we all pull together, it is a lot. If you go to the front page of libradio.com, plus I've got some links up here, you can make a contribution. The LIB Radio Fund Drive, December 2024. You can be a regular contributor. If you scroll to the bottom of libradio.com and look for the subscribe link, you can share any amount. Or if you would like, you can make a one-time donation of any amount that you choose. Any amount that you choose will definitely be a part of our collective responsibility, our mutual success. That's what we're here for. I do encourage us all to do something for the collective, do something for the group. I put up the link on my Facebook page for today's live broadcast. I put up the link. I'm going to push up the link here for my Rumble broadcast as well. Here, just give me a second. Let me manage that or maneuver to that. But we want to do this. We want to change the world. We want to be a significant voice for change, a voice for a new reality. We want to be the people that other people turn to when they're looking for the model of responsible leadership, especially for this community, people of African heritage, this community, which is unfortunately lacking responsible leadership. I was talking to someone yesterday about a book that she's co-writing. And the book was talking about critiquing African American leadership and giving a background to why African American leaders are so traumatized. That sounds like an interview we need to have on LIB Radio. So I look forward to that conversation. Because the truth is, matter is, African American leaders are quite traumatized. They're traumatized because part of the reason they're traumatized right now is because they were encouraged to invest so much energy into this political campaign that was a dud. It was a dud. And as we can see now, what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks and a day or two? Or maybe 3 weeks after that election, the Democratic Party candidate is gone silent. She still has a period where she's in the supposedly the second most powerful political position in the United States. Why isn't she showing everybody in the last weeks of this presidency what a presidency of her would look like? Because that campaign was a dud, and I know that African American leadership feels like their pants are pulled down around their ankles and they got a real raw feeling where it shouldn't be happening. We need our own responsible leadership to be aware the real contest for the future, the real contest for economic power, the real contest for political, educational, recreational, spiritual, technological power lies. That's why we have constituted and continue to remain on the air. I see you in the house for Africa One, checking in from UK. Hotep, Brother Keedy, and Global LIB family. I want to thank you all for sharing this response ability. That's who we are. That's what we do. That's what we intend to continue doing for the foreseeable future. She said, this is a great illustration why Africans must eschew the right-left dichotomy. The behavior of both sides mirror one another. An African-centered political paradigm is the only way to our sovereignty. Ashe, 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 yo, I completely agree. In fact, you remind me of a book I wrote in which I quoted someone quoting the book Dead Reckoning by I'm trying to think of the author's name. I was thinking about it a little bit earlier, and I said I had to bring that up during the show today. But the quote says, here, bear with me 1 second. Well, the quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but I have the exact quote in my book, The Road to Power, 7 Steps to an African Global Order. The quote says, there can be no true friends without true enemies. There can be no true friends without true enemies. Unless we hate what we are not, we cannot love what we are. And went on to talk about these are the old truths that existed and will not easily or soon succumb to altruism and benevolence. And that essentially once humankind comes to realize this, then they can move forward. I got to get that quote. Bear with me. I know I can find it. The author, Christopher Tidbins, I think. The book is Book Dead Reckoning. Author, Christopher Tidbins, I think, Tidbins. And the quote is, "There can be no true friends without true enemies." There. I'm searching for this. Find this citation. So using an AI search engine, the first location was DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo says, I can't find that. That's too complicated, Kitty. And I said, hey, wait a minute. I think I can find it. Let's see if it can find it. And I'm going to have to pull up one more search engine. Christopher Tidbins, Dead Reckoning, R-E-C-K. Oh, let me spell everything right. Christopher Tidbins, I think, is the name. There can be no true friends without true enemies. I can't find a specific citation for the quote, "There can be no true friends without true enemies," attributed to Christopher Tidbins in Book Dead Reckoning. And that's not what I'm looking for. So let's go over here. Let's simplify this a little bit. There can be no true friends without true enemies. And I know I can find that. And let me just search this citation. Oh, from Michael Dibin. That's Dibin. That's the book. And here is the comment. There can be no true friends without true enemies. And let me find. And it found me 150 friend enemy quotes. Let me just see if I can find that one by Michael Dibden. Find Didbin. And yeah, I see the quote. I'll find the whole quote. But I'll have to find that in my own book. Bear with me. Sorry about that. But that's the way these people believe. That's the way these Hegelians believe. That's the way this deep state conspiracy believes. That's the way the corporate hegemony, the matrix corporate hegemony believes. This is a part of my book, upcoming book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars V and VI. What I'm describing today, with all of these conflicts taking place around the world, many of them constitute World War V. Let me go further into showing you exactly why I make that statement. So going forward, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up some of these articles that I have going on. That's not today's conversation. That was research for the other book, World in Crisis 2024. This is based upon a search engine. Just give me a list of these crises. Brave AI said, based upon the provided search results, here are some of the hot spots of domestic uprisings and political turmoil in 2024. And what's on this list? Let me just share with you. Sudan. The country is experiencing a devastating conflict with over 6 million people internally displaced. The situation is exacerbated by political tensions, economic crisis, and humanitarian needs. Number 2 on this list, Somalia. The country is facing a severe humanitarian crisis with 25.4 million people in need of assistance, political instability, clan conflicts, and terrorist activities are ongoing, making it a hotspot for political turmoil. Number 3, South Sudan. The country is struggling with political tensions, economic crisis, and humanitarian needs. The upcoming presidential election in December 2024 may exacerbate the situation, or it may bring a new leadership into place that begins to solve these problems. See, this search engine is going through the major media right now where the anti-African propaganda is rife. And so I want you to recognize as I'm reading this, yes, they singled out the first 3 hotspots in the world were African countries. I have no problem with that because I think these crises happening across Africa should be getting world attention. But the bias, there seemed to be no hope, like this is Africa's perpetual future, while Joe Biden is over there scrambling to get a piece of that African cake for America's economic future. So comprehend why this dichotomy. Number 4 on this list, number 3 on the list, Gaza. The region is experiencing a dire humanitarian crisis with widespread, this is number 4, with widespread destruction and displacement. Political tensions between Israel and Hamas are escalating, posing a risk of further conflict. That was the understatement of the year. Gaza is genocide, straight up, straightforward genocide. And it threatens to throw the world into nuclear holocaust as Israel is fighting against 7 different Islamic countries in that region. I've heard some people say that the Gaza conflict may be the end of the state of Israel. It's going to be an interesting journey ahead. Number 5 on the list, Lebanon, which is one of those 7 countries that Israel is at war with. The country is facing a deepening economic crisis, political instability, and protests. The lack of a president and ongoing political gridlock are contributing to the turmoil, and it doesn't help that Israel is just bombing Lebanon mercilessly. Doesn't help that Israel is bombing Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, and that Hezbollah, which is a proxy military, is more powerful than the Lebanese military. Number 6 on this list, Myanmar. The country is experiencing political unrest with an ongoing armed resistance against the military junta. Ethnic conflicts and human rights abuses are widespread, making it a hotspot for political conflict. Again, Myanmar, a place where genocide is taking place. Pakistan. The country is facing political instability with ongoing protests and tensions between the government and opposition parties. The situation is further complicated by regional conflicts and terrorist activities. Pakistan is, of course, bordering up against India, with which it has long been hostile. Both countries, India and Pakistan, are amongst the latest additions to the nuclear armed countries list. Some 9 countries around the world openly admitting that they are nuclear armed. Israel won't admit it, but everyone knows it, and everyone knows Israel lies about everything. So, Ukraine, the country is still reeling from the Russian invasion, with ongoing military conflicts and political tensions. The presidential election in 2024 may influence the country's political trajectory, or it may not. You know, the people of Ukraine are being used as a proxy military to attempt to suppress Russia's ambitions. The people of Ukraine, I'm talking about the people, the citizens, they don't deserve to be used as batteries in an ongoing conflict of the should long been finished World War III, so-called Cold War. Sri Lanka, the country is recovering from an economic crisis, but political tensions and protests are ongoing. The upcoming presidential election of 2024 may exacerbate the situation. And number 10 on this list from Brave, Ethiopia. The country is experiencing political instability with ongoing conflicts in the Tigray region and tensions between the federal government and regional authorities. So that was one of several search engines. And let me just give you one more. Let's go to Copilot, where I asked the same question. List these conflicts taking place around the world. And here's what their list was. Here's what the question. List those countries where far-right political parties, this was the second question, not the first one. Let me answer the first one just real quickly from Copilot. Here are some of the key hotspots of domestic uprisings and political turmoil in 2024. Number 1, United States. The political divisions deepen as the presidential election approached, testing American democracy, undermining U.S. credibility internationally. Yes, it did. Number 2, Middle East, Western Asia. Escalating conflicts in Gaza and potential broader regional wars involving the U.S. and Iran, involving Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, United States, Britain, Iran, Iraq. All of them fighting over there right now. All of them. Wow. And United Arab Emirates is behind the scenes, scooping up the weapons delivery contracts. Can we do better than that, people? Yeah, we can do better than that. Number 3, Democratic Republic of the Congo, intense fighting in the east exacerbated by political tensions, economic pressures, and climate shocks. Number 4, Sudan, ongoing war with the highest number of people killed and displaced in the world. Ukraine, continued conflict with Russia with diplomatic efforts failing to bring peace. Ukraine conflict is not only Ukraine and Russia, but also Britain, United States, Poland, North Korea. Iran is helping to arm the Russians. And then the Russians escalating this with the use of ballistic missiles, long-range ballistic missiles carrying multiple warheads. This is right on the brink, people. Right on the brink. Number 6, Myanmar, military junta's efforts to crush rivals and maintain power. Number 7, the Sahel region, instability spilling over from Libya, which the U.S. and France destabilized the stable Libya. That's where that began. Let's be clear. So the Sahel, instability spilling over from Libya with protracted crises and militant activities involving the entire association of Sahel states, which would be Chad, Mauritania, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. 3 of those have now formed a federation. The world's newest country, as of July 2024, is the new African nation of the Confederation of Sahel States. It's now geographically Africa's largest nation, surpassing Algeria. Number 8, Gaza, escalating violence and potential for broader regional conflict. Again, Israel is fighting 7 nations around it. That's broader regional conflict. Taiwan, rising tensions and potential conflict escalation, and Israel, potential for conflict expansion and regional war, as well as Israel is on the brink of a major political rift, as Netanyahu has been brought up by the International Court of Justice on charges of genocide, crimes against humanity, an arrest warrant for him. And the Israelis, many Israelis, are leaving the country. They don't want to live in a perpetual war state. Israel has been at war since its founding in 1948. It has had 20 different war episodes, Israel. And people don't want to raise their children in that. They don't want to raise their children with these right-wing Zionists creating so much conflict. Israeli citizens don't want to live like that. The Sephardic Jews, they've been living in Western Asia and Northern Africa and parts of Europe, especially the Iberian Peninsula. Sephardic Jews have been living in that region for thousands of years. But after the founding of the State of Israel and it becomes a proxy for the Cold War, all hell broke loose. And Israel is one of the 9 nuclear-armed nations in the world. So the next question I ask, and I'm giving you the response here of the AI response, the question: list those countries where far-rightist political parties have risen to or are challenging for power in the mid-2020s. Copilot returned the following. Here are some countries where far-right political parties have risen to or are challenging for power in the mid-2020s. Number 1, Italy. The Brothers of Italy Party, led by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, has seen significant gains. Number 2, France. Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party has been performing strongly in elections, and just this week, the Prime Minister of France, Macron, I think he's Prime Minister or President. He's Prime Minister, I think. I can't remember whether theirs is a primarily parliamentary or a different system. But President Macron has called for elections, disbanded the cabinet or disbanded the political parties, and they're going head to head with the right wing in upcoming elections in France. And France has been, in Africa, France has been real demon-like. Let's be clear. Dr. Arikana Chimburo gave us some powerful insights when she was the AU ambassador to the diaspora. She gave us powerful insights about what France's role in Africa has been, quite a destabilizing, depleting economic resources. And so more and more countries, including the Sahel states, telling France, get out. Telling the United States to get out. Number 3 on this list, Germany. The Alternative for Germany, AfD party, has been gaining ground. Number 4, Hungary. The Fidesz party, led by Viktor Orban, continues to hold power. So the far right wing is in power in Hungary. Finland, far right parties are part of the ruling coalition. Netherlands, Geert Wilders' Party for Freedom has made significant strides. Sweden, the Sweden Democrats are supporting the center-right government. Austria, the Freedom Party has been performing well in elections. Slovakia, far-right parties are part of the ruling coalition. And Croatia, far-right parties are part of the ruling coalition. So understand, when we see all across the European Union, across the NATO countries, that these tendencies towards the far right are rising, we have to see the parallels to what happened in the exact same region 100 years ago. When we saw the far right's fascism rise first in Italy, then Germany, Spain, Japan. It probably was first in Japan. The rise of fascism and the huge destruction unleashed upon the world when the fascists decided they wanted the empires that the monarchies possessed. And so they declared war against the monarchies. First, the Great War, they declared war against, well, actually it was a civil war that took down the Russian monarchy, and the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, and originally the Prussian monarchy, German monarchy, took them down. And then when those were replaced with different types of governments, that was when we saw the rise of fascism. It's a complicated story. I do tell that story in the upcoming book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars 5 and 6. Anybody out there think what we're sharing is valuable? You think you would like to make a contribution to help us sustain our expenses of staying in place? I would like to think so. Would you make a donation right now? Small amount, large amount, you decide. Whatever is convenient, whatever works for you. I be honest with you. I contribute to this every day in labor and I pay the bills. A number of you help me, for which I am so wonderfully grateful. We have out only one donation since Sunday, and that one donation was very small. It wasn't the size of the donation, it was where his heart was. But we're going to have to do better than this, people. We don't want to be walking around talking about, oh, I remember the day when we had Harambe Radio. Harambe Radio's gone right now. I remember the day when we had Blake Radio. Blake Radio's gone right now. I remember the day when we had Global African People Radio, GAP. GAP is gone now. I remember the day when we had integrity in the voices who did research and reported to us, but they have been silenced because we were more attracted to celebrity, the cult of celebrity that permeates the media, that the others who own those media put this cult of black celebrity out for us to indulge in. Don't you see there's something sinister about that? Should we choose to? Don't you see that we could do something better than that? So to our listening audience, come on, join us. Join us, join us, join us. We can do great things. Give it a little love. Have a little hope. Make this world a little better. Try it a little harder. Harder than we've tried before. We can do great things. Great things. Great things. Let's all pull together. So here's the link. I'm pushing this link up once again for our Rumble family. Let's all pull together. Harambe. To the Facebook family, let's all pull together. Yes, 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 we can. Si se puede. We can do whatever we will to do. And somebody put up a link to an article. He says, check your media. And let me see if this is something relative to today's program. And what's happening is sending me big documents. I can't use up that memory while I'm on the air. So sorry about that, Brother William. Going forward, I pulled up a number of news stories. This one from the International Crisis Group. And let me share this one with you, our listening audience. Let me pull this up on my desktop so I can see it here. This from the International Crisis Group, dated January 2024, entitled 10 Conflicts to Watch in 2024. So this is from January. This is a futurist broadcast, a prediction. I like these because especially now that we're in December, we can validate and verify how accurate was this article, this forecast. Commentary, 10 conflicts to watch in 2024. More leaders are pursuing their ends militarily. More believe they can get away with it. Can't we stop things falling apart? 2024 begins with wars burning in Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine, and peacemaking in crisis. Worldwide, diplomatic efforts to end fighting are failing. More leaders are pursuing their ends militarily. More believe they can get away with it. War has been on the rise since about 2012, after a decline in the 1990s and early 2000s. First came conflicts in Libya, Syria, and Yemen, triggered by the 2011 Arab uprisings. And no, the Libya crisis was not triggered by the Arab uprisings. The Arab uprisings were fomented, fostered, sponsored by Western intelligence agencies. Read the book, The Economic Hitmen, by John Perkins. And he talks about the jackals and what these jackals did to try and coerce leaders into directing their natural resources towards the United States and its proxies. Or we, the jackals, come in and convince you to change your policies while we destabilize the government, even resulting to assassinations and attempted assassinations. That is true. So the war has been on the rise after a decline in the 90s and early. First came conflicts in Libya, Syria, and Yemen, triggered by the 2011 Arab uprisings. Libya's instability spilled south. And Libya's instability wasn't Libya's instability. It was Libya's collapse, destruction of the Libyan state. That's what the Western press, and this one comes from crisisgroup.org. I think their intentions are good. But listen to the language. Listen to how wimpy it is. This is why I do not sign on to democratic liberalism. It's just wimpy. Can't compete. It's always going to be defeated by more powerful agents of fascist power. I'm not a fascist. I will never sign on to fascism, but I can assure you this much: fascism does exist, and it is a big threat, and we don't have time for this limp-wristed approach to eradicating this terrorism of right-wing fascism on the planet. Come on, people. Come on, man. Where's your cojones? Libya's instability spilled south, setting off a protracted crisis in the Sahel region. A fresh wave of major combat followed the 2020 Azerbaijani-Armenian war over the Nagorno-Karabakh enclave. Horrific fighting in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region that began weeks later. The conflict prompted by the Myanmar Army's 2021 power grab and Russia's 2022 assault on Ukraine. Add to those 2023's devastation in Sudan and Gaza. Around the globe, more people are dying in fighting, being forced from their homes, in need of life-saving aid than in decades. On some battlefields, peacemaking is non-existent or going nowhere. The Myanmar junta and the officers who have seized power in the Sahel are bent on crushing rivals. In the Sahel, they're more bent on crushing the terrorist jihads that France and the United States were purportedly fighting, until we found out that France and the United States were giving some assistance to these jihadist terrorists. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So again, I'm about tired of reading this liberal jibber jabber that this author is writing, but I'm trying to get through some more of it, because they are pointing out these hotspots, and we do have insights and perspectives on what these hotspots are about, but they are not formed by left-wing liberal Democrats. No, that's not us. In Sudan, perhaps today's worst war in sheer numbers of people killed and displaced. You take the word perhaps out of it. In Sudan, today's worst war in sheer numbers of people killed and displaced. U.S. and Saudi-led diplomatic efforts were muddled and half-hearted for months. Russian President Vladimir Putin, banking on dwindling Western support for Kiev, seeks to force Ukraine to surrender and demilitarize. Conditions that are understandably unpalatable for Ukrainians. They're becoming more palatable for Ukrainians as they realize they're just being ground up in a meat grinder, as the West wants to somehow defang Russia. The best that they can do is grind up former allies of Russia who they tricked into wanting to bid to become part of the European Union and part of NATO. I feel for the people of Ukraine. I really do feel for you. My heart is with you. But you've been misled, you've been had, you've been tricked. And in background, these greedy bears like Wackenhut, Halliburton, BlackRock, and mercenary armies, they're all licking their chops. Who's going to rebuild Ukraine? Who's going to rebuild the energy infrastructure? I guess GE wants a piece of that pie. Who's going to rebuild their water systems, rebuild the dams and bridges and port facilities that have all been destroyed by 2 years, nearly 2 years of bombing and destruction? When it was all because the Western powers lied. When they told at the end of the Soviet Union, when Soviet Union dissolved in 1989, they said, we will not take former Soviet socialist states and incorporate them into your enemy, NATO. And they lied. At least 5 or more have already been incorporated into European Union and NATO. And Ukraine was where the Russians drew the line. Russians drew the line, and the West said, no, we're not going to do that. And then they sponsored a coup d'etat against the elected government in Ukraine and replaced it with this comedian actor. He's a good actor. He's acting like president. So, in all of these places, diplomacy, such as it is, has been about managing the fallout, negotiating humanitarian access or prisoner exchanges, or striking deals, such as the one that got Ukrainian grain onto global markets via the Black Sea. These efforts, while vital, are no substitute for political talks. Where fighting has ended, the quiet owes less to deal-making than battlefield victory. In Afghanistan, the Taliban seized power as U.S. troops left, without bargaining with Afghan rivals. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed struck a deal in late 2022 with rebel leaders that ended the Tigray War, but it was more of a cementing Ethiopia's victory that ended than it was an accord about the region's future. This past year, Azerbaijan took back control of Nagorno-Karabakh. Its September offensive finishing off what its victory in the 2020 war started, ending a 30-year standoff over the enclave and forcing an exodus of ethnic Armenians. Wars in Libya, Syria, and Yemen have also wound down, but without lasting accommodation among the parties, or even in Libya and Syria, a political track worth the name. In fact, belligerents are mostly waiting for a chance to seize more land or power. This article was written in January 2024, and just this past week, there was this lightning assault on the Syrian city of, I think it's Aleppo. I may be wrong about the title, but they just, the rebels, backed by the West, have just seized Aleppo. That's the word. That's the city. And while the media is trying to glorify them coming back in and seizing Aleppo, what the media is reluctant to report is, as soon as they concentrated their forces in Aleppo the way they did, they triggered a response to where Syrian and Russian airplanes now have them concentrated and are bombing them. The Syrian Muslim population, whether they be rebels or supporters of the elected government, they're being used like cannon fodder. Terrible, terrible situation. In the end, according to this concept we call population wars, civilization wars, the clash of civilizations, according to that philosophy, the more Muslims that are neutralized, permanently neutralized, the better off the West is for capturing the future that it wants. It wants selfishly. And the Zionists want. It's hardly news that warring parties want to vanquish rivals, as the article continues, but in the 1990s, A flurry of agreements ended conflicts in places from Cambodia and Bosnia to Mozambique and Liberia. The deals were imperfect and often entailed ugly concessions. A period scarred by the Rwandan genocide and Balkan bloodletting can hardly be romanticized as a golden era of peacemaking. Still, the string of accords appears to signal a future in which calmer post-Cold War politics open room for diplomacy. Oh, writers of this are so naive. Over the past decade or so, such deals have been few and far between. Colombia's 2016 settlement of its decades-long civil war and the Philippines' 2014 deal with rebels in its Bangsamoro region are outliers and in some ways legacies of another era. And, of course, the Colombian Civil War settlement has unfortunately been revoked. There was a peace negotiation, a ceasefire, negotiated just 10 days ago to take place between Lebanon and Israel. And look at the headlines from yesterday. Look at today's headlines. Israel started right back, killing people in Lebanon. Can humanity do better than this? I'm getting exhausted. I pulled up so many more of these stories. So many more of these stories. Can we do better than this? I'm going to pull up one more story and share with you. This is from Crises Watch, tracking conflicts worldwide. And I actually do have this map. We're still looking at the map of the fund drive. Let me just double check that. Where are we at? So many desktop windows open. Kitty, you can't do this to yourself. But real quickly, let me just find out. Oh man, I got a lot of windows open. StreamYard. Where is it? I'm not seeing it. Bear with me. Wow. Just too many windows open. Let me close this one. I won't need that. Even though I had some storage pulled up on that. I always chastise people for having so many windows open that you can't tell what's going on. And that's what I'm doing myself right now. So here we go. Facebook. I see I am up on StreamYard. I do see for Africa One talking to us. Urugu, which is a name for the incomplete being, for the terminology from Dr. Marumba Ani's book, which is an analysis of anthropological analysis of white aggression in the world. Urugu. Urugu was unable to extend the 1967 Summer of Love beyond a few months. Therefore, it's not surprising that 100 years later, they are openly reverting to type. Yeah, good point you make. A Summer of Love. It was a beautiful moment. I was a little bit young. I was only 12 when the Summer of Love went down, but got a chance to witness it. We saw the free spirits, the hippies, and what happened was the hippies, because of gross materialism, the rise of gross materialism and the rise of the corporate hierarchy that eventually has become World War V, replaced the hippies with the yuppies. The yuppies then took off their flowers, or put down the flowers and picked up a briefcase, took off their love garments and peace signs, and picked up dollar signs and suits and went to Wall Street and got greedier and greedier and greedier and greedier. And then they coerced Silicon Valley to use their brilliance and intellect to create the technologies that would support this unbridled, unrestricted need for consumption, for wanting more and more and more, gluttony. And now look at what has become. During the height of this pandemic, when so many people were losing their jobs, being laid off, so many jobs being laid off, so many small businesses going out of place. Don't you know a handful of billionaire corporations made money faster than ever? Reportedly, Jeff Bezos made $13.8 billion in a day, largely because of his stock holdings. Elon Musk, their wealth is in their stocks. And the stocks are being driven by speculation. Look at this wild roller coaster of Bitcoin. I dare not even look at it because it's crazy. It's outrageous. And there's no real intrinsic value behind this. It's just about speculation and the concentration of wealth. Speculation and the concentration of wealth. Can we do better than this? I would like to think so, but there's no real proof that we can do better. There's no real proof that humankind will catch up with its great potential. There's no real proof. So again, this last one I pulled up, Crisis Watch from the crisisgroup.org. I'm just going to post up this link and we're going to wrap it up with this conversation. Post up the link real quickly. Where can I find this link at? Here we go. There we go. I found myself. Oh, I was there all along. And post this link. I posted it up on the Rumble. Let me put it up on Facebook. And put it up elsewhere. Here, bear with me. This is worth it. And one more place, I'll put it up. Read the article, and we're going to begin to wrap it up. Because I tell you, talking about war and conflict and all of this, this is draining. It really is draining. And we can do better than that. I'm hoping that in the interim, somebody went to LIB Radio and found that link and made a donation. And as I'm checking back, nobody did. We had one donation coming today that was for $1.06. I don't know why he picked that number. I'm sure he had some logical reason for picking that number. One donation since Sunday when 5 people came through. And all of our broadcasting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was worth $1.06 to you, our listening audience. That's kind of sad. But it is what it is. And we're either going to do better or we're going to say we did our best. And we held out as long as we possibly could. Until in the end, finally, the machine crushed us as well. But boy, we had a wonderful time doing what we do. Here's this last story I'm sharing. And bear with me, I'll find it. It's up here on my desktop. Crisis Watch is our global conflict tracker, an early warning tool designed to help prevent deadly violence. It keeps decision makers up to date with developments in over 70 conflicts and crises every month, identifying trends and alerting them to risks of escalation and opportunities to advance peace. In addition, Crisis Watch monitors over 50 situations, standby monitoring, to offer timely information if developments indicate a drift toward violence or instability. Entries dating back to 2003 provide easily searchable conflict histories. Building on our global conflict tracker on the horizon sounds the alarm about conflicts and crises that may emerge over the next 3 to 6 months in support of global conflict prevention efforts. So, here is the global overview. October 2024. Our monthly conflict tracker highlights 5 conflict risks in November. Point 1. Underscoring the risk of a wider Middle East war, Iran struck Israel with a ballistic missile barrage, and Israel launched airstrikes on military sites in Iran. Tehran subsequently promised another counter response. Point two, Israel killed over 1,500 Palestinians in Gaza in October and launched an all-out military assault to depopulate the Strip's north, including by imposing a siege, weaponizing starvation, and stepping up indiscriminate airstrikes. Israel's operation, which UN agencies warn puts the North's entire population at imminent risk of dying from disease, famine, and violence, could forever alter the territorial and democratic landscape. And I will add to that we reported on just a week or so ago, Israel has deployed sniper drones. And in the story, we reported instance of use of these sniper drones, which included against women and children, sniper drones shooting children in the head. Someone was operating that drone, shooting children in the head. That these drones are being deployed, Israeli jets will bomb an area, and when people come in to attempt to search and rescue, they call in sniper drones. It doesn't sound real, does it? I wish I were not telling the truth. We documented it. You just look up sniper drones in Gaza, and you can confirm that I'm not just making this stuff up. It's been confirmed by mutual reporting agencies, including Western Press. Sniper drones, these are powerful drones with automatic and semi-automatic weapons attached. Point three, in Lebanon, Israel began ground operations and expanded its bombardment, which has killed thousands, displaced over 1 million, and could intensify. Hezbollah appeared set to continue missile and drone attacks on Israel while battling Israeli forces in the south. The latest developments there was this peace accord, this ceasefire accord reached. And the last 2 days, Israel is increasingly breaching its agreement in the ceasefire. Fighting raged in Mexico's Sinaloa state between rival factions of the Sinaloa cartel, one of whom reportedly forged an alliance with a rival outfit, which could extend fighting to other parts of the country. Point, a disputed election in Mozambique sparked deadly protests while 2 opposition figures were killed. More violence could unfold in the coming weeks. And just on today's morning broadcast, there was another political assassination, and I'm trying to scour my mind. Did I hear who it was? I can't recall who it was. That could have been in Mozambique. A political assassination just took place. It was reported in this morning's media, and I can't remember which one it was. Crisis Watch identified 11 deteriorations in October, notably, point, hostilities in Sudan intensified after the army and its allied forces launched multi-pronged offenses against the rapid support forces beginning in late September. The conflict also aggravated pre-existing tensions among the Chadian ruling elite, while Boko Haram killed over 40 soldiers in Chad's deadliest jihadist attack in years. Haiti, Grand Grif gang slaughtered at least 115 people, one of the country's worst mass killings in years, as gangs launched coordinated attacks in the capital and beyond. Point, militants in Pakistan's provinces bordering Afghanistan inflicted what is likely one of the deadliest months for security forces in 2024. Point, Georgia ruling party claimed victory in parliamentary polls, triggering allegations of fraud from the opposition, who threatened to boycott a new parliament. Last point, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, carry out an attack in Turkey, capital Ankara, that killed 5, prompting the military to intensify airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. And yes, the PKK, Kurdistan's Workers' Party, is considered to be a terrorist group. But nonetheless, how do they get support? Yeah, they get support from those purporting to be combating terrorism in the world. And I just want to find out who was this victim of assassination I heard about today. Assassination. This is 31 minutes ago. Yeah, this is the one I heard about today. The news comes from newsx.com. This news comes from newsx.com. Let me share this with you. I'll share it after the let me see if I can share it real quick. At least put it up on my Facebook page so I can know more about this later. The world in crises. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let me do this. Let me just push up this link. And here, just briefly on this particular crisis, this assassination, here is what the story says. Again, from NewsX, surveillance cam captures harrowing moments of Brian Thompson's assassination. Dramatic surveillance photos capture the moment a suspect points a gun at United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson before fatally shooting him outside a Hilton hotel. Our authorities are investigating the premeditated attack with a $10,000 reward for any information. $10,000. I wonder what Brian Thompson's salary was. Let's real quickly, I'm going to just push that up and I'm going to search for that. Brian Thompson's annual salary. So offering a $10,000 reward for somebody who was probably making more than $20 million. His $10.2 million annual compensation package, including salary, bonus, and stock options awards, made him one of the company's highest paid executives. Wow. But let me talk about his assassination, December 4th, that's today. Written by Satyam Singh. Here's what the story says. Surveillance photos released by law enforcement revealed a harrowing moment. A suspect pointed a long handgun at United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, fatally shooting him outside the Hilton Hotel on 54th Street and 6th Avenue in New York City on Wednesday morning. The photos shared with the Post by law enforcement show the suspect taking aim and firing multiple shots at Thompson, 50 years old, before fleeing. According to the NYPD, the gunman escaped the scene through the Ziegfeld alleyway and later mounted a bicycle to make his getaway. More surveillance footage shows the suspect pedaling down 6th Avenue clad in dark hoodie, black face mask, black and white sneakers, and carrying a gray backpack. According to reports, the weapon used in the attack was fitted with a silencer, which made the crime even more calculated. NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch said the shooting does seem to be a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack. Investigators are working on leads, but have not made any arrests. NYPD Crime Stoppers has offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the suspect. A little bit more to the story. So much trouble in the world. Shocking death ahead of corporate functions. Police and company officials described how Thompson had reported at Hilton Hotel around 6:45 a.m., expecting to attend an Investors Day conference. Death snatched away his prospect by way of the devastating assault. Emergency personnel also promptly arrived at the hotel scene and performed CPR. They managed to rush him to the Mount Sinai Hospital. There is more said. He was pronounced dead before lunchtime. Brian Thompson had been a stalwart at United Healthcare, dedicating over 20 years to the company, serving as CEO of its insurance division since 2021. He played a critical role in leading the organization, which ranks fourth on the Fortune 500 list and employs over 100,000 people across the United States, based in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Thompson was described as a seasoned professional and respected leader in the healthcare industry. This is the murder of a high-profile executive and had shaken the corporate world and the public. Authorities are urging anyone with information about the attack to come forward, with a $10,000 reward serving as an incentive for tips that could bring the assailant to police. Now, here's what I'm going to have to say. And this story may reach my book. The book is called Disaster Preparedness for World Wars V and VI. And part of this disaster preparedness is to prepare for domestic violence. This is an incident of domestic violence assassination using a silenced weapon on the streets of New York City. Subtitle of my book, The Untold Story of How the Global Economy and Security Order is Shaping Up for the 21st Century. Could it be that this assassination of Brian Thompson may be a precursor to a wave of assassins? I almost call them psychopaths. I also almost call them sick individuals. But who's to say? Who's more sick? Someone who pulls out a silenced pistol and shoots a CEO in the head. I'm presuming he shot him in the head. Shoots him dead. Or is it more sick the corporate class? Because Brian Thompson wasn't the highest paid member of United Healthcare. And United Healthcare and all of these health medical industries charging so much while the population gets sicker. $5 trillion. The size of the U.S. healthcare budget. $5 trillion. A whole lot of people are not included in that. They have no medical insurance, no coverage. A whole lot of people are getting sicker and sicker and sicker, to the point that since the pandemic began, life expectancy in the United States actually shrank. And when we look at the costs of therapies that might hold promise for people, there's one called Zolgensma, a treatment for congenital defects for which stem cell therapy is being preferred. A one-time therapeutic session, $2.1 million. And you don't think that people are angry? That people don't see the reality? Feel the reality? That medical and healthcare expenses, especially in emergencies and crises, chronic disease cases, are the number one cause of household bankruptcy. People are very angry. I'm not predicting, I'm not forecasting, I'm just warning. We're going to have to do better for our collective society. And these corporations, one of which I'm broadcasting on right now, that banned me on my other channel where I was doing all that research for 15, 16 years. They've become problematic. And the legal system, judicial system, doesn't seem to be able to rein them in. In fact, they have co-opted all four branches of governance in the United States. They have co-opted the executive branch, the legislative branch, they have co-opted the judicial branch, and they have co-opted the media, which is an extension of governance. On that note, I'm going to begin to wrap it up for today. I think we did a good job with our theme for today. The theme for the show, World in Crisis. And we looked at a lot of these crises. We didn't talk about France's no confidence vote that took this place. We did talk about the ascendance of far right parties across the European Union and other parts of the planet. We did talk briefly about the former Soviet republics, how republics like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, and I'm trying to think of some of the other Soviet republics that are in conflict right now. Not all of them are in conflict, but some of them are. And we did talk about the Asian domestic crises happening in South Korea. The crisis is ongoing in North Korea. The crises taking place in Taiwan, the Philippines. All of those made it to our topic. So I think we did a good job today. And we did point out the conflicts taking place in Somalia, in Sudan, in South Sudan, in Gaza, Lebanon, Myanmar, Pakistan, Ukraine, Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Yemen. We did cover a lot of ground. Pakistan. So we're going to be here as long as we can. As long as we can hold out, we will not submit. We will not yield. We will not quit. We're going to be the ones that hang on. So on that note, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Let me do this much. Go back and clean this desktop up. Where are we at? Facebook. There's where we at. No, we're not there. Oof. My desk is... I do not like doing a program with my desk crowded like this. It's just so crowded right now. Let me just start closing these windows. That's not it. There it is. StreamYard. There we are. So let me remove that and begin to wrap it up. Ooh, what did I do? Has that been on like that the whole show? I hope not. Stop that screen and go to my settings, virtual background, and say none. Okay. That just happened a minute ago. So I want to thank you all for tuning in today. You've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Tell your friends to tell their friends that we have our own now. And ours is our voice to the future. It helps us to explain in real time what is happening around the world, stories which sometimes get confused when they play through the mainstream liberal corporate propaganda outlets. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.